Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Sandvik. I'm a Knight Mozilla Fellow at The Guardian in London. I've been in the UK for just over 10 years. But I'm actually from Oslo. And this is my first home. I don't know if any of you recognize it. It's Kringsjå studentby. My mom came to Oslo to study law, to be a lawyer. And so when I wasn't in kindergarten, I would also go to the university and study law with my mom. Until one day when, we were sitting in this, the largest lecture hall in the University of Oslo. Loads of people, all totally quiet. And then the lecturer walks in to start the lecture, and I go, «Å nei, ikke han gamle kjedelige mannen der igjen!» Or if you don't speak Norwegian, «Oh no, not that boring old man again!» So at the age of 5, I was already fed up with law and the patriarchy. And I like to think that I've been a rebel ever since. I didn't see the point then of going to university and listen to the same old man saying boring stuff. So I decided I was never going to study law. I'm actually here to talk to you today about teaching computing. And I named it, Raising the Next Generation of Rebels. And some of you might be thinking, oh, well, I don't have children. I never even want children. Why is this relevant to me? But I have some news for you, and that is those kids are going to be running the world, and you're going to have to live in it. Hopefully you'll find some of it relevant. Just a little bit of background. Which countries are teaching computing in schools already? In Europe, we have Bulgaria, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Lithuania, Poland, Portugal, and the UK. And Finland is making it compulsory from year 1, first grade, in 2016. And I haven't heard any news whatsoever from Norway about when they're going to implement it. Because it's only a question of time, right? Surely Norway still wants to be competitive with these countries. And at some point, hopefully soon, they will implement a computing curriculum as well. So in the UK, it was implemented in just a period of 2 years. So Eric Schmidt in August 2012 came to the UK and basically accused it of throwing away its digital heritage. You invented a computer, you're not even teaching this stuff in schools, shame on you. And in just 2 years, they managed to get something together. But it was also because of this guy, Ian Livingstone, who wrote a report for NASTA called Next Gen. And this is the report that all the politicians and everyone were talking about. This is why we need to teach computing. And in this report, he says, we felt that the education system was not meeting the needs of our industries. Never mind meeting the needs of our children or society, but, we're failing the industry. This is really bad. Something must be done. And, the gaming industry in the UK is the fastest growing industry, worth $2 billion at the moment, or actually a few years ago. And, he's saying in this report that the sad truth is that we are already starting to lose the cutting edge in the UK. And he blaming this on education. He's blaming it on the pipeline. There just isn't enough talent. He actually says there is a talent shortage. And this is the failure of the education system. You are not supplying enough people. And the terrible, terrible consequences of this is going to be that we're going to have to look for people abroad. And as you probably know, if there's anything the UK hates, it's immigrants. So, this is a really bleak future he is painting here. We don't have enough people to make all this games money. We can't go abroad to get them because, foreigners. Something must be done. And, you have to give them credit, like they did it in less than 2 years. It's amazing. As of September 2014, all children in the UK, well, certainly in England, are learning how to program. So what I wanted to talk about here is how can you, first of all, get the government to make sure that everyone learns how to program, but also don't do it like the UK did. So actually, who here thinks that all children should learn how to program? I'm hoping everyone. Someone who doesn't think that all children should learn how to program? Hi, that's what I like to see. But anyways, so I think that instead of learning to code, we should be talking about coding to learn. So when you learn to read, you are not just, learning for the sake of reading, but when you have gained the skill of reading, you can use it to learn absolutely everything else. And it's kind of the same with computing. So when you have learned to program, you can use this knowledge to learn about mathematics, about arts, about physics, about absolutely everything else. And this is why we should have computers in the school, because it is the greatest tool that we have available to us. And not necessarily because we want to have gaming factories. But, unfortunately, meanwhile, at code.org. So this is an article by Brett Victor called Meanwhile at code.org that you should all read. But in it, he basically says that, there are lots of reasons why we should learn to code, but unfortunately, anyone, what they are saying is totally wrong. So you have Bill Clinton saying, this country needs a lot of code for some reason. Or you have a senator saying, programming will make you rich. Mark Zuckerberg going, industry needs you to be a cog in the corporate machine. And Bill Gates says simply learning to program will make you think better. This is amazing. Or Sheryl Sandberg, you can be a soldier in a war with East Asia. And we're always at war with East Asia. So these are all terrible reasons to learn to code. I think I have to give some credit to will.i.am, who says you can be an informed citizen and gain an understanding of the world around you. And this is yes, this is actually a reason to learn to code, because so much of the world around us is now controlled using code. And, we learn maths and physics, not because everyone is going to be mathematicians and physicists, but because you need to know those things in order to understand the world. And so you need to know how computers work and how they control everything around you in order to understand how the world works today. But yeah, not many people seem to be talking about that part. It's mostly about, the pipeline. So we have a few narratives around this whole learning to code thing in the UK that we keep seeing over and over and over again, and I think that they can be quite damaging. For instance, we have this one, which is, want to create the next Mark Zuckerberg? Here's how. Or, who will be clever enough to be Britain's next Mark Zuckerberg? Tech City, where is the UK's next Mark Zuckerberg? Student startups, could you be the next Mark Zuckerberg? Or, creating a British Mark Zuckerberg is all about education, education, education. And, I see this in the news all the time. We are obsessed with Mark Zuckerberg. And we are absolutely certain that Britain needs one of those of their very own. And it's so tied in with the education and learning to code and the new curriculum as well. And this is what kids are seeing. And if anything that the kids are seeing, if everything that the kids are seeing about learning to code is, are you going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg? Like, we are just, as an industry, we're just going to, attract people that want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. And that's going to be a terrible, terrible world to live in. We do not want any more Mark Zuckerbergs. When is enough? And, I also do sort of mentoring at University College London, and they are not any better. I keep seeing things like this. Could this UCL alumnus be the next Mark Zuckerberg? And it's very frustrating. We do sometimes talk about other people than Mark Zuckerberg, sometimes. For instance, this guy, Nick D'Alessio, who sold his app for, I think it was like 19 million to Yahoo. So we hear about him a lot, because obviously that is like the biggest dream that anyone should ever try to achieve, to sell your app to a US company for a lot of money. And that is a dream of Norwegian, or at least UK, wannabe Silicon Valley things like Silicon Roundabout. We do have other stories that we don't talk about, that I wish that more people would talk about. Like this 17-year-old, Brittany, Brittany Wenger built a cloud-based neural network that can detect breast cancer. This is amazing. She was 17 when she made it. And of course, Yahoo didn't buy this app for 19 million, because what interest does Yahoo have in saving people's lives? And so we don't really hear about it. And just to demonstrate, so a quick search on the Guardian website for Nick D'Alessio returns 175 results. And a search for Brittany Wenger returns 23 results, but none of them are actually about her. And the top one says, the top 30 young people in digital media. So I was hoping, maybe she's at least one of them. But no, Nick's there though, because, he sold this app for 19 million. So I think that we need to think more about the sort of hero worshipping that we do, and the kind of stories that we tell in the media and to each other, and especially things that kids will see. So, you all know that we have a diversity problem in tech, and one of the bits of research on it says that girls like to help people. And currently, girls don't think that computers help people. And it's because we keep seeing things like Mark Zuckerberg and don't see Brittany, who made an app that can detect breast cancer. So yeah, we need to find different heroes and maybe realize that, creating the most value for shareholders is maybe not the ultimate goal. So this is one of my heroes. You should all know who this is. But you probably know him as the inventor of CSS or CTO of Opera, the browser. So this is Håkon Wierli, and he is one of my heroes because he illegally hosted all of the Norwegian laws on a server in Switzerland, where when you had to pay to get access to the laws. So lawyers mostly, but also normal people, would pay a lot of money to access basically a database of all the laws. And what Håkon did was he put them all on the web for everyone to see them. And, he could do that because he's, white and rich and he's somebody. And he was in Switzerland at the time, so it wasn't like very much that they could do about it in Norway. They were not very happy about it when it happened, but they are now available to everyone. And I'm sure you also know that he used to drive around his electric car and just park it everywhere and not pay his tickets until electric cars could park for free in Oslo. It's like, yes. He's like one of my rebel role models. But of course, you try being someone else than him and not paying your parking ticket, and you might not, have such a good success with that. So one of the things that people are surprised to hear when I talk at things like UCL. So I go to UCL and talk about my job in computing to students who are studying computer science. And I talk to them about the things that I do every day, and they are so surprised to hear about the things that I do. Like, they have no idea. And these are people who are studying computer science, and when I say, like, oh, yeah, I'm a fellow at this art gallery, and I'm making this piece of art, we made this installation for the Olympics, that was a war memorial, or I work with Oslo City Council to reduce littering or to increase cycling, and I work at The Guardian in the newsroom, and I am teaching reporters how to basically scrape websites and do their programming, just like using regex to find the stuff that I need to find and things like that. And they were like, what? You can do that as a programmer? Is that a job? Is that a real job? So they have no idea that you can do more with computers, and that sooner or later, everyone are going to use computers. And if you know how to use computers, you are going to be at an advantage over if you don't. So I'm just going to show one example of something that I did here in Oslo 2 years ago. For the...
Jeg står her hver dag, jeg, vet du. Liker at det kommer noen innom og hilser litt på. At folk liksom bryr seg, da. Blir så glad av det. Så takk for det, da.
Det er stilig.
For using me.
These are just, Arduinos with IR sensors on them. So when you put something in the rubbish bin, it would make a sound. And I've never seen anyone pet the rubbish bin before. I'm pretty sure you don't do that normally, but people seem to like it. I was one of these attitude campaigns that the council do time to time. And so, I go into schools and say, today I programmed some rubbish bins. And people are just like, what? I don't understand. So I think we need to work a bit on the image that our industry has. So I saw this in my Facebook feed earlier, actually yesterday. And there's going to be an amazing Code Club thing happening here in Oslo on the 16th of June. And then they chose this image that really creeps me out. It's just this dude who's just totally dead. And it has this matrix thing coming down. And if you are a normal person who are not working in tech, I think you're going to look at that picture and be scared. I don't want, a parent is not going to look at that picture and go, I want my kid to be like that. So there are things that we could work on. Also, newspapers seem to just always choose a picture of a dad teaching their two sons how to code. There are absolutely no other images available, it seems. And we're really lucky that we have a lot of cool tech. Kickstarter was mentioned earlier. I love Kickstarter. I backed a lot of things. I was excited about this thing until I realized that it's going to be one of those things, and it's called Boy, and kids don't even know about Game Boys because they're not old enough, but they want to take them into all the schools everywhere and teach kids with this, but it's going to just reinforce this idea that gaming is for boys because it's called Boy. Like, why not call it something else? And Gameduino is a much better name anyways. Who came up with this Boy? It is not cool. Why? So there are a lot of people who are trying to do good things, but maybe should think a little bit about what message they're sending out. In the UK, we have been very lucky that we have a lot of money flowing in this general direction. Learn to Code is very popular as a movement. Everyone wants to have their logo on it. And certainly we have a lot of people basically just throwing money at it because they want more people, right? Google needs more people, they need more workers. They know they have a diversity problem. They think that just focusing on the pipeline is going to be much easier than actually, having apprenticeships or training people, trying to retain people who are already there. Those are hard issues. It's relatively easy to give 3.6 million to the government and have them teach everyone computing. And of course they want everyone to know how to program, because then programmers' wages can be kept in check. And, it's generally it would be very good, right, for these companies. So they're putting a lot of money into it. These are just 4 of the things that Google is putting money into. And of course, they are also the main sponsor of Raspberry Pi, which are not as cool as Arduinos, but they are British. So, yeah, sorry about that. Going back to Code Club. Code Club was this thing that I co-founded 3 years ago after I went to a pub. Sometimes, sometimes when you go to a pub and you, buy a domain name after having a few drinks, and then the next day it's, on BBC News. Yeah. Anyways, Code Club is a nationwide network of volunteer-led after-school coding clubs, and I think it was a really good thing. In the 2 years between the government said they were going to start teaching it and they actually started teaching it, it filled a sort of gap, at least for the white middle class kids that had pushy parents that could get a code club into their school. It was really amazing. I had a lot of fun making the lessons, although I think now that I should have done more. So just to show you a few of the lessons, what they're like. You're going to learn how to make a game. You are going to make a balloon popping game. In this project, you will create a memory game. In this project, you learn how to create a game. And in this project, you learn how to create a game. And, in this project, you'll learn how to create a platform game. So obviously, this is Ian Livingstone's dream, from the Nesta report. The kids that go through this will clearly be equipped to go straight into his gaming factory and churn out code. So it's amazing for him. And I just don't think it's enough. It's fun and the kids love it. But this, doesn't teach you anything about society. And, there's a lot of things that computers can do. And then there's the stuff that we choose to do with the computers. And there's a world between the two. So just as an example of why I don't think the industry should be, or maybe this is not so hard to imagine, but it would be cool, right, if somebody came into the schools and with loads of drones and let the kids play with drones. That would be amazing. I think that would be amazing. I like drones a lot because, no one's going to kill me with a drone. And, there's definitely a space for maybe some industry funding to be given for expensive equipment, and maybe kids should have access to these things. But if BAI systems were to design the curriculum and go into the schools and teach everyone about drones and have drone games from the very beginning that taught you how to kill people, that's what games do anyways, right? I don't think that would be such a good idea. But it's not so hard to imagine a world where that could actually happen. I mean, we're not so far from it because the UK government doesn't have any money. And in this austerity thing, the one thing that is never really mentioned when David Cameron says, we need big societies to fix these problems, is that big society is funded by big corporations. And you might want to think a little bit about exactly how that is done. So for instance, Futurelearn is one of the companies that are trying to teach the teachers computing so that they can teach the children. So imagine all of a sudden you have never taught computing before, and then, come September, you are teaching computing to everyone. It's quite hard, right? So they had to have training of some sort. And one of those things was Futurelearn doing this online MOOC in teaching computing. And I took it just to see how it was. I wanted to see how are they preparing the teachers. And I started watching it, and it was like, oh, this is a lot of BT. It's like, okay, so he works at BT. Oh, he's mentioning all the BT pioneers, Tommy Flowers, but not Alan Turing. It's a bit weird. It's like, oh, BT, fiber optics, innovations, more BT. And I was like, everything seems to be BT. And then I found this press release where it says, the growth of Futurelearn continues as telecommunications giant BT signs up to sponsor. And, there are certainly loads of things that we can learn from BT, but I think if they were to design the whole curriculum, you'd certainly miss out a lot of stuff. Those are just some of the things to watch out for. And then, since then, I have been, I should probably say, I had to resign from Code Club because I was talking about corporate mass surveillance. And I tweeted a link about how Samsung has lots of weapon manufacturers in Korea. And the board was not happy with that. So they said I could either continue running Code Club, or I could, or I could talk to people about corporate mass surveillance. So I chose free speech. And since then, I've been working with the Scouts, and we're making digital maker badges. There's certainly a lot of improvement to be done. For instance, this digital citizen badge, it sounds so promising, but it's like turn on and log into a computer. Use a piece of software. And when I hear digital citizen, I am thinking things like, activism and democracy and, participation, and not just switch on and off a computer. But I've been working with them to make more interesting lessons, or things that I think would be more interesting. It's been a challenge because a lot of them don't have computers. Most of them don't have internet. And the kids certainly would rather be outside than in front of a computer anyways. And to tell you the truth, so would I. When I was a kid, I hated computers. And we've been doing things like kite mapping, where we go and take pictures with a kite and then contribute it to OpenStreetMap. And, I strongly believe that public data should be public, but in Norway it's not, or at least not map data. But if you go and volunteer with a Scouts group, you can have an army of little people that go and collect data for you. It's amazing. You should try it. Especially things that OpenStreetMap is not so good at, right? Addresses with house numbers. So it's really good for some things, but it doesn't have house numbers and things like that for a lot of areas. And just go to a Scouts group and get 20 kids to do it for you. It's amazing. everyone should try it. And I think it also introduces kids to technology in a more interesting way that isn't just about, going to Silicon Valley and making an app for that thing that your mom no longer does for you for free. And, kite mapping is cool because it's being used by activists all over, and it's being used in relief efforts to map after, like, the Haiti earthquake or after oil spills. That is basically all I had. Thank you.
Turns out you actually have to turn your microphone on for it to work. The other thing it turns out is the couch is in fact blue.
Yeah, it's amazing. I thought it was green all this time.
Now we know.
Yeah.
So I've been following you from a distance for a while, and it took me like half a day to work up the courage to go over to you and say hello yesterday. Because I think the work that you've done with Code Club is so amazing. And I didn't realize that you actually got fired from them. Tell us, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
It's like, it's not only that I get fired, it's like I get fired over a tweet. So I tweeted an article about Samsung's weapons manufacturing in Korea, and it was just a tweet with a link to an article. But Samsung, being one of the main sponsors of Code Club, picked up, or the board picked up on that, and they were like, well, you can't say bad things about or sponsors. And I was like, yes, I can. I can take their money and say bad things about them. I have no problem with that. And we got into an argument about like the role of Code Club, and I thought that we should teach kids about how this actually affects our society, and you shouldn't just learn, oh, drones are cool and look what I can do with it and I can take cool videos. You should also learn the part where drones are used to systematically like kill people, and I don't think you can have one without the other, or I don't think you should. You should learn the consequences of the software that we are using and the tools that we are using. But yeah, I was basically given an ultimatum, which was, stop saying bad things about our sponsors, or quit. So I chose to quit. I'm now at The Guardian, where I have a little bit more free speech.
That's good. I think, it's the right choice, but it must have been kind of terrible to leave that behind, given how much effort I know that you've put into it.
Yeah, it's always hard to give up on your baby, like your pet project. But it's also like mostly I'm just angry with myself because I couldn't prevent that from happening. Like once you have a board and you have lots of sponsors, it still seems like money speaks loudest, which is annoying, especially for a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
But at the other hand, I've been able to do a lot of cool things since then. So like working with the Scouts. So with Code Club, so there are like 35,000 kids in Code Club enrolled currently, which is amazing. And a lot of kids are learning to code that way. But with the Scouts, I've been able to, reach 600,000 kids weekly that are doing Scouts. So that is kind of cool.
So you went from 35,000 kids to 600,000 kids.
Yeah.
That's a one-up.
I think that also the kids that we were reaching with Code Club, it's usually, so, we were getting volunteers like yourself to go into schools and teach. And it would, be parents who are working in this industry. So it would be mainly for, kids that were introduced to it anyways. And I think with the Scouts, it's kids that don't necessarily want to even look at a computer, and it's kids that would much rather be outside and look at the computer. And I think it is really important that we are also reaching these kids, and that is like why I ultimately want the government to do this for every child. That is the only way that we can ensure that everyone is teaching, is for it to be, in the national curriculum. So, I mean, volunteer organizations are great, and they can be like an extra asset, but it's never going to be as good as a national curriculum.
Did you catch Michael's talk yesterday about the rules for rebels?
Yes. Yeah.
So, in terms of the Code Club movement, like, have you gone through that same journey of being sort of ignored and then ridiculed and then fought and then winning?
Definitely.
Where do you think you are on that journey now?
I
mean,
am I even on that
I
journey
know that your
now?
ambition is to try to teach every child to code, so clearly not quite there yet. But
so I think, definitely in the beginning, a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, that's cute, good luck with that. Like, they didn't believe it. Even people who were really supportive later, and even people who were on the board later, who in the beginning were just like, that's a cute idea, it's never going to work. There are a lot of people in Britain still who don't think that everyone should learn to code. They don't see how it's relevant. I think that they're wrong. But now with the government in the UK teaching it to everyone, anyways, it's like it's happened.
yeah, I think you made a very good point in the beginning where you're saying that those kids will be running the world and you're going to be living in it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's why.
I'm going to be old. I'm really terrified of getting old, actually, because I know actually, I don't know any old people in this industry. It's creepy. Where do they go? I have no idea what I'll be doing when I'm old. Like, they just don't exist, right?
You just vanish.
Yeah, they just vanish.
Yeah, just by the time you're like 42.
Yeah, and then your life is just controlled by these kids. So get your influence now while you can.
So that's kind of scary. Obviously the Code Club idea has spread to other countries, and in Norway we have this Kidsakoder, which is the Norwegian kind of inspired version of that. And that's basically how I learned about you, because I was sort of helping out teaching at one of the Norwegian code clubs.
Yeah.
And we sort of started out the kids with making games, and you were showing us some of the lessons. But there are lots more lessons there now that are non-games. And I think the kids, quite often, they have more fun with doing non-games, actually.
Yeah, so a few of my favorite ones are actually like teaching how to make websites, just because the kids get to, practice self-expression, and they get to make something. So with the games, at least the ones that I originally designed for Code Club and the ones that I was showing you, it's like very, follow these instructions to the letter, and it's not teaching how to be creative or even what makes a good game. And with the websites, it's like a lot freer. But I think that everything should be like that, though. You should let the kids decide what they want to make and then make it. It shouldn't be like a prescribed thing. But then again, that's harder on the volunteers.
It is hard to be volunteer, because it turns out that a room of 9-year-olds, they just want to follow your instructions for about maximum of 10 minutes before they go and like run around and scream instead. And then you kind of go like, oh, aren't you going to be on your computer? They're like, yeah, I already made a quiz.
Yeah.
And it's multi-threaded, and it's got sound, and it's got noise, and it's got everything. You're like, but it took me 3 years and a bachelor's degree to get multi-threading. And you're 9 and you just did it.
In 10 minutes, yeah.
And they don't understand that it's hard. And that's infuriating.
I think it's brilliant. I had some really good moments in Code Club where the kids have basically been like, oh, so I can make my own block, and I put these other blocks in it, and I can put my own custom block around it and name it something else, and now that's a thing. Oh, cool. Does that mean that all those other blocks I've used, they have tiny blocks inside them? And it's just like, yeah, okay, you get it. And also, like, I've been teaching recursion And I've asked, I do like free workshops, and I say like, this will be suitable for kids like 12 and up or 11 and up and so on. And then parents will come along with their very bright 7-year-olds and be like, and I'm teaching Python. Like, can he even write? Can she write? And they'll be like, I'll be fine. And then, the 7-year-olds will just get recursion, just like.
Yeah, they don't understand that it's hard. Like, recursion's hard, multi-threading's hard.
Yeah.
Why don't they get that?
No, I love it. And especially like this one girl, we were doing fractals using recursion, and she like typed something wrong, and it turned out completely different from what I had prescribed. And I asked her, like, are you going to fix it? And she was just like, no, mine is a lot prettier than yours. Like, well, you're okay. That's valid. And I think that my favorite things that I get in feedback from the teachers is actually that learning to code is teaching the kids that failure is just part of the process of learning. And I don't know why they don't teach that from the beginning without programming. Like, that should be like one of the first things that you teach, that failing is part of the learning process. But they say that the kids that are doing Code Club are more happy to try things. They are more happy to just try things without asking. They are more happy to help out with, like, so much of the stuff that we teach in school today. It's like you have to be just one person doing it, because otherwise we don't know how to grade you if it's not your work. And then you come along with programming, and you can see like everyone's source code, and you can steal it, and you can tweak it, and it's like, it's like teaching collaboration in a different way. But I think it's important for the real world.
So there's a question here: what should we do in this room to best shape a better future?
Well, I think that, first of all of you that are Norwegian, you need to, contact your local representative and say you need to, put computing on the curriculum. Failing that, just like cut out the government altogether and go to your nearest school and say you should be teaching this. And Kidsakuder and Kodeklubben have, ready-made materials that you can use. You can just like print them off, or not even print them off, just like read them on the computer. Go into the school and start teaching. But I think also the people who are going to be developing the curriculums further, I think they should take into consideration that it's not all about making games and apps, and maybe try to consider more civic tech and how we can use tech to help people, especially because helping people has been identified as one of the things that girls really, really want to do. They want to help people. And we need to make it clear that computers help people. Like, we help people every day. It's just not clear to them. So we need to make that more obvious. And and don't just like sit in front of the computer. There's a lot of cool things you can do outdoors. I'm a big fan of kite mapping, but there are a lot of other cool things you can do as well.
Definitely. You had a question in your presentation, which was, who are the heroes we worship?
Yeah.
And I think a few people in this room have a new hero today. And it was really, really, really great to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.